Hey guys, it's Dan. Today I'm going to walk around the YJ and I'm going to show you the swap progress, what we're going to be doing, axle swaps, a little bit of stretch, all new shock mounts, truss, high steer, the list goes on. Stick around and check it out. Alright, so what I've done so far is remove the stock axles. Well, they weren't stock, but close enough. And I've got a set of axles from a 78 Ford F250. It's a Dana 44 front, 8 lug, and a Dana 60 rear, which is back there. Instead of just stabbing those in there, I decided to get a little crafty and use Wagoneer springs and do spring over. Now, those are like a 2-inch lift anyway, and that would end up being like 7.5, 8 inches of lift. So what I did was I took the main leaf of the Wagoneer spring, removed it from that pack because it's 1 inch longer and it has a 2-inch offset pin on it. So it basically allows you to move your axle forward 2 inches. And I still had my stock YJ springs laying around. I've been holding on to them for about 8 years now, ever since I lifted the Jeep the first time. So I took the main leaf out of the stock pack and I took this Wagoneer leaf and I fused it in with those leaves so that way it wouldn't be quite as much of a lift. And as you can see, it turned out it's not quite flat sitting here. It's a little taller than I wanted, but I'm hoping that it breaks in a little bit. And here's my Dana 44. Now, it came out of my parts Jeep. The guy had a project. He never finished it. His loss, my gain. So the only thing I don't like about it is this front doesn't have a locker. He put a Yukon Sure Grip in here, so it's like a limited slip. For now, I'm just gonna run it. I'm gonna see how I do with a rear aux locker and this, see how it goes. I actually have access to the same year Dana 60 front, which it was going to be a lot more work to get to it. So I figured down the road, maybe I'll snatch that out of the mud, clean it up, rebuild it, and then swap it in because everything will fit. It'll just be pretty much a direct swap other than maybe the steering and stuff. As far as steering goes, this came with Reed racing knuckles and Artec high steer arms. I've noticed that these are not high enough for my steering to not run into the leaf springs, so I actually ordered some 1-inch spacers to lift these up, and that's gonna get them up higher. But hopefully it should allow my tie rod to clear when this side's stuffed, and hopefully the leaf spring doesn't get into it. Now at the same time, it's gonna put it higher and it's gonna make it a danger of hitting the frame, which my old setup on the Dana 30 did that. And there is a fix for that. You can basically notch your frame out, plate it in, and it gains you, however high you're comfortable going. So I'll cross that bridge when I get there. If I have to notch this out and do that, I will. So here on the other side, it's basically the same thing. I'm sure that I might end up having to change this pitman arm because I just got this feeling that when I flex this side up, the drag link's gonna run into the tie rod. Another thing I picked up was these C-gussets from Ballistic Fab, and this was my first welding project with the new welder. I feel like I did pretty good on it. There's some places it looks a little ugly, but I think they turned out all right. There's a lower one also. So that's basically it for the front axle. It's sitting in here. It has a lot of work to do, but I can't really do any of it right now until I get more parts. So for the rear, I could not find another set of used Wagoneer springs, so I bought a brand new leaf pack. Now these suckers were 7 leaves at 1,440 pound capacity, I think. They were way too much lift. I've actually removed the 5th leaf down and then the 7th leaf down, so I'm left with 5. And I've got 5 here and 4 in the front. It may make the back of this Jeep sit a little bit higher, but I feel like these will settle in time. So for now, I'm gonna leave it with 5. So what this has also done, the same thing as the front, it has moved me back 2 inches, plus my leaf spring perches have these 3 holes in them, which allows you to move it back another inch, basically. You use like an offset perch, so the perch will sit like right here, and the pin won't be in the middle of it, it'll be toward the front of it. So I'm gonna have 3 inches of stretch back here. I had 1 inch of stretch before with the Ford 8.8, and it was a problem with hitting the gas tank, and it's gonna be a problem here, possibly with my exhaust on flex, which that won't be a big deal. But the gas tank's gonna have to go. Now, as you can see, I have already modified this gas tank, and it was not even the factory skid. It was like a homemade one that somebody made. It's way beefier than the factory one. So what I did was I cut a big notch out of it, and I took the L-shaped piece and flipped it, welded it back on there. In order to get the tank back in there, I had to heat it up with a torch till it got really soft, cinched it down in there. I had to use ratchet straps to kind of squeeze it down in there, and it allowed me to have 1 inch of stretch. And this is actually a really cool mod that a lot of people can do. Maybe I'll cover more of that in a different video. This Jeep's definitely going to be taller than it was before. I had a 3.5 inch lift, 1 inch boomerang lift shackles, and the 1 inch body lift. running on 35s. I'm guessing this is going to be 2 to 3 inches taller at least. Plus, I'm going to be running 37-inch Humvee tires. I'm not sure on the wheels yet. So it's definitely going to be a taller Jeep, but at least it'll be wider to kind of compensate for that raised center of gravity. I want to talk a little bit about shock towers. This is what I chose to go with for the front. These moto-built. They set on the edge of the frame like that. They come unwelded. You got to set the tabs up and weld them. So I think they turned out strong enough. For these, you can see where I cut off the old stock mounts and I just kind of filled in the gouge marks from the grinder because I had to cut the welds and then take the air hammer and get underneath of it, and it left a lot of gouges. The old mount kind of comes down over and down like that. So next up is going to be locating these. Now this axle's pushed forward from where the old one was, but my lower shock mounts are going to be cradled right here on the back side of the axle. I haven't figured out how far in or out yet. So these should be fairly straightforward. Get the lower mounts on, get this on, tack it up, make sure it all lines up, and that's going to be about all there is to that. Now for the rear, I went with these fairly popular Ford, I think they're F-250 shock towers. Honestly, I can't even tell you. And you can go to the dealer, and some dealers charge, I heard, as low as $10. My dealer wanted like $30 for them, and I was able to locate these Dorman ones on Amazon, a 2-pack for like $54 or something. So all in all, I think they're gonna work pretty good. Now, the problem that I'm gonna run into is if I try to just mount them out here on the side of the frame, they're gonna stick out too far. My shock is about right here. No matter where I locate it down here, the tire is gonna be that close to it, and I'm concerned that when I stuff this one tire up and it starts angling, that the tire is gonna rub into the shock. So I may end up having to French these into the frame. I have to locate them first. I'm a ways off from doing that, but I think I'll be able to make it work. There was just no way I was gonna be able to use the factory shock mount location. It's way too forward on the frame. And in my previous video, you saw me repair that section of the frame anyway. They were too far forward, even for the stock axle and the stock location. They were angled way forward like this, and then I even had extensions on here, so they were clear up here. It still was just a problem. The shocks were too close to the center of the pumpkin. They weren't oriented right, so that it just put them in a bind all the time and stuff. So having them out here, and I'm gonna have them turn 90 degrees from factory, so my bolt's gonna go this way instead of that way, and that's gonna allow, when the axle flexes up, it allows it to pivot on the bushing rather than go sideways against it and bind against it. So that's pretty much it for that. We'll have to stay tuned, and I'll show you guys all that when I do it. For the most part, I've got the rest of the Jeep pretty much how I like it. This cage, it's actually a kit from Trail Gear. I think it just adds on to your family roll bar. Now mine came with a sport roll bar. I call it the Kitty Crusher. I had swapped it for a family bar. So this was the first phase, was this front section, and I got it all set up in here, tack welded, and I took it to a buddy to do because at that time all I had was a 110 welder. More recently this year, I took it back and I said, hey, fab up some cool angled tubes. So he did that, all this stuff, and that crossbar. I love how it looks. I love that my rear passengers have a lot more protection now. And of course, the cage is tied into the frame there, and this bar right here. I did not tie the B-pillar in because it terminates right on top of this body mount, and I figured, you know what, that's close enough. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It doesn't seem like a lot of work, but there's actually a lot of stuff left to do, and I'm still waiting on a lot of parts. Anyway, I think this Jeep can be a great compromise between those three things. I'm not gonna have the best of any world, but I think I can make it perform above my expectations in all three. Is it gonna take some tweaking and a lot of work and probably more money than I want to spend, but I'm going to make it happen, and I'm going to show you guys the process. Well, anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this little look at my piece of shit YJ, and we'll see you next time.